Welcome to our 2024 Directors Close-Up Spirit Awards edition. I'm Maria Raquel Bossi, Senior Director of Education and International Initiatives at Film Independent. Before we start, I want to take a moment to thank all the partners that make Film Independent's important work possible. Thank you to this year's incredible supporters of the Directors Close-Up, the Directors Guild of America, SAG Indie, and IMDb Pro. Also, thank you to our 2024 Film Independent Spirit Awards supporters, principal partners IMDb Pro and Lavazza Coffee, and official partners Bullet Frontier Whiskey, Fiji Water, Petite Flute Champagne, and Stella Artois. We so appreciate your support and devotion to the independent film community. Tonight, we continue our Director's Close-Up series with this year's Best First Screenplay nominees who have written some of the most compelling stories I have seen this year. Here with us are Sammy Birch and Alex Mechanic of Made December. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hi. So nice to be here.
Great to see you. Next up, we have Tomás Gómez Bustillo of Chronicles of a Wandering Saint. Hi, Tomás.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman, writers of Theater Camp. Hello.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Where are you joining us from? Are you in LA?
Yes.
Great. And next up, we have Laurel Parmet from The Starling Girl. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, thank you
Great
for
to see
having me.
you.
Good to see you guys too.
And last but not least, we have Alejandro Rojas and Juan Sebastián Vázquez of Upon Entry. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Hola.
how are you?
And they deserve extra credit because they're joining at 2:30 in the morning from Barcelona, right?
Yeah, 2:35. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you both for staying awake for this. It's going to be wonderful.
Our
And
pleasure.
our moderator is Fran Kranz. He's the writer-director of Mass, which won the 2022, the Robert Altman Award at the 2022 Spirit Awards. And he was also nominated for Best Screenplay. So he should know a thing or two about what we're talking about tonight. Welcome, Fran. How are you?
Good. No pressure. Thank you. No, thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for doing this. And before I leave, I just want to congratulate you all and thank you for being here with us. And now you take it away, Franz.
thank you. Appreciate it. And yes, I was gonna say congratulations to you guys. I loved your movies. Very excited to hear from you all at this sort of exciting moment for your project and you and I'm excited because I think they're all very unique films, and so I feel, or from each other, you know, this is a very like diverse collection of films, which I think will be really helpful for the audience in this discussion. So look, I just, by way of introduction, I feel like the most basic question, maybe to get out of the way first, and just tell us a bit about, you know, where the story came from. You know, the kind of give us a sort of a quick origin story, and kind of that moment where you all thought, you know, okay, this is the movie I'm writing or we're writing. I got Sammy and Alex right up in this corner, so I'll start with you two.
Hi.
Hey.
Well, we've made shorts together for a while. We're married also, and we kind of thought of the idea for this movie really over the course of a couple of conversations, and then outlined it together.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, sort of a wanting to look at the tabloid culture of the 90s and how it's bled into the true crime machine that we have right now, and setting something 20 years after a traumatic crime took place, giving it more room for just breath and investigation, and all of that really kind of came pretty early.
Just a few conversations, and then kind of thinking about the way into that through the eyes of this actress coming to study them and being able to have that space to kind of have elements of humor and satire, you know, on top of this kind of heartbreaking story.
And yeah, this is for May, December. I see in the chat.
Obviously, yeah, no, I didn't know you guys were married. Obviously we have to talk about collaboration with all the teams here, but let me let's get, I want to hear from all of you about where these, you know, these movies came from. So maybe Tomas.
Yeah, hey, okay, so where did the movie idea come from?
Yeah, I think
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I think really for me it was like just like an image that popped up into my head. I kind of believe like movies find you and you don't find movies. And so it was just this image that popped up into my head of this person who was full of light, wandering around in like a very dark field. And just I started to explore what that could mean, and then that mixed with this like Argentinian rural folk legend that's called La Luz Mala, which is bad light. And it's this idea that you know, when like farmers and people who live out in like rural Argentina see like a light in the distance of a field, they usually attribute it to a soul who is going from one place to the next. So that was kind of the inspiration.
Yeah, that's great. What about Nick and Molly?
Yeah, well, Molly and I had grown up doing theater together and with our other collaborators, Ben and Noah. And so we were always very interested in this world. And, you know, we had been making things together in New York, and wanted to do something a little bit larger. This was like many years ago. As a short, we decided we wanted to do something that was sort of improvised and exploring a community, and gave all of our friends and them a chance, you know, all the actors that we knew, a chance to play characters that they were very excited about and that we knew really well. And so the world of youth theater was one that we knew would be very fertile, and also, yeah, that we knew like extremely well, like embarrassingly well. And so it was an exciting thing to tackle in this sort of now like smaller space. And then for many years, we were trying to figure out how could we take the ideas or the things that worked there and expand them larger and try them on a larger scale. And so, yeah, the opportunity came, you know, to adapt it basically into a feature, but we knew we needed like a different angle and a different conceit onto how you were going to sustain that world or explore that world that would sustain an entire 90-minute movie. So that was sort of, yeah, the genesis. Molly, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
No, all of that was completely wrong, but it's fine. We can move on to somebody else.
I know.
No, that's great. And yeah, forgive me, I should know this, but Ben Platt and Noah Galvin are credited writers. They're also, this is a four.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it honestly, as an actor yourself, like came out of also just feeling like we weren't given the opportunity to show how silly we all were. I know that I've just always wanted to play someone that is completely mentally ill. So we thought, let's write the most batshit characters for ourselves and show the world who we really are. So that was kind of where it first came from. And yeah, just I love collaboration, and like, you know, a lot of people think that making a movie with that many people is a crazy thing to do, but you know, film is such a collaborative medium. So we all really enjoyed working together in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so much to talk about there, but yeah, let's do this. And Laurel, how about you?
Yeah, so my film was it's a couple things. It comes from personal places. You know, the film is about, for people who haven't seen it, it's about a teenage girl who has an affair with an older man. And I had a similar experience when I was a teenager. And I didn't see myself as a victim at all, and had a lot of agency in the relationship. And after it ended, like a few years later, I'd had a lot of guilt about it. I had friends who I really pursued this guy, and I had friends who like made me feel bad about it. And I sort of just like pushed these feelings away for many years. And then I was doing research for a different project in Oklahoma, and I met a group of women from a patriarchal church, which is like a super fundamentalist church. And I spent time with them for this other project, and it ended up being this sort of very eye-opening experience for me, made me have a lot of realizations about my own relationship, and made me question like why I was experiencing all this guilt and wondering where it came from. And there was just, I recognized that we had a lot of similarities just in terms of like our attitudes toward with these women, just in terms of our attitudes towards our bodies and our sexuality. And even though we grew up very, very differently. And so I decided that I wanted to tell a story looking at my experiences, but set it in this world that, is an extreme Christian fundamentalist world, but ultimately like reflects our own world. And, we live in a society that's super affected by conservative Christian thought, like literally affects all of our day-to-day lives. And so I think I wanted to understand that world better too, because it affects me so directly. And then interestingly, over the course of making the film and my research, and I just ended up having this like sort of admiration for faith in ways that I hadn't anticipated. And so the film sort of became about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk about the larger journey and sort of what was sort of learned from it too at some point. But yeah, no, thank you. And then lastly, upon entry, Alejandro and Juan.
Yeah. So basically the film is we came up with it because it's based on our own experiences and our friends or families, relatives that have gone through U.S. Custom airports situations, and we kind of thought that it would be interesting to set it up all there when you go through a secondary inspection room and all. And it's kind of those stories that they happen behind closed doors. You don't hear too much about them, and we kind of felt that we had a story there to tell, and so we put it all together and made it a challenge to stay in a room and do it.
Yeah, thanks. Juan, you good?
Yeah, this guy just summarized it perfectly.
Okay, yeah, great. Well, look, I mean, I guess the sort of second part of this kind of origin question, but hugely important, is how this came, because we can talk about process afterwards, but how this came to be, from a script to physical production. I mean, a lot has to happen, like a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of critical choices. Nick, I even heard you say we had this opportunity. Obviously, Sammy and Alex, I'm kind of dying to know how this got into Todd Haynes's hands and Killer Films. So maybe we can start with that. I'm just how from the page it got to photography, because that's obviously pretty important.
Yeah, it was we outlined it together. I wrote it. There was a window where, didn't have any representation, and just was trying to get people to read it. And then when it went out, I got signed and it went out. And the first producers that we share with Theater Camp, which is Gloria Sanchez, Jessica Elbaum, and Will Ferrell. And they were amazing and just got it from the very first moment. And it was them who got it to Natalie Portman. So without a director, and she said she wanted to play this part, and it was she herself that sent it to Todd, because they've wanted to work on something together. I'm speaking like no big deal, but it was very, very crazy. And then of course with Todd comes the amazing Killer Films, Christine Michon and Pam Koffler, and all his collaborators, including eventually Julianne Moore.
Yeah, no, amazing. Well, that's just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
It's
big
a normal movie process.
But no, but I feel like an important takeaway there, the initial sort of, it feels like that initial step started with Gary Sanchez, right?
Mhm.
It got out to production companies, and you guys kind of hit a home run. But
Mhm.
that feels like that kind of first breakthrough, which I feel like is helpful. I mean, what about you guys? Well, you shared that, Nick and Molly. Was that kind of what happened to you all, or did you have an existing relationship there?
Yeah, it's Gloria Sanchez actually. I had worked with Jessica and Noah worked with Jessica on Booksmart, which I think was a part of these talks many moons ago. And Jess was like, I can tell that you guys want to do more. I mean, I would always stay on a set when I was not acting on it, and they would tell me to go home, and she was the only one that was like, something's not wrong with you. I can tell that you want to soak up all that you can. And so when we wanted to make theater camp into something larger, everyone said no, and she's the only person that said yes. But she also just believed in it and believed that this kind of weirder film that doesn't get made anymore, could have a place. And then, yeah, it took many years with her to find anyone that would, that was willing to make this type of film. And when, yeah, Nick saying when we found Picture Start, they believed in it, and it felt like, oh, we actually are gonna make this maybe. And then of course it fell apart 5 more times. But yeah, and then when it came to actually writing the script, when Picture Start came aboard, then we started writing it because we needed to write it because it's more of a hybrid film where it's scripted, but a lot is improvised as well. We needed to write specifically for the actors, and that was kind of when the writing began for that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm very curious to hear what the page looked like. But what about you, Laurel? You were in that. This was the Sundance Lab. Was this a script submitted to the Sundance Lab? Am I right?
Yeah, yes, it was, we went through the labs. It sort of similarly, it was, many years in the making, came together, fell apart many times. I met my producers at South by Southwest. I had shorts there years ago, and connected with them that way. And then, like, a few years later, when I had a draft of something, I shared it with them, and they really loved it and came on board. And then we had found financing before the pandemic, and we had it cast, and we were ready to go, and we were set to shoot in like May of 2020, and then all fell apart. And so then we actually went through, Sundance has a program called Catalyst that they invited us to, and you basically go with a few other projects and pitch to a room of people with money. And it's this whole weekend, and we did that, and found our financiers that way. And it ended up being this like amazing blessing in disguise, because the people who came on board were just wonderful people to work with, were like so on board with everything I wanted to do. And then yeah, we went and we made it. And so the film literally wouldn't have been made without Sundance. So they're amazing.
And Alejandro, I mean, you shot this in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so working outside of the country, I'm curious. So how was that for you all? And this is your first screenplay. So yeah, I mean, what are the hurdles there for you guys?
Yeah, this is our first screenplay. I'm a DOP, I'm a cinematographer, and this is my film co-directing with Alejandro, who also comes from post-production, from editing. So I think that really added up when we were writing the script, and we were like thinking how it could be actually done. And we knew at some point really early that we wanted to direct this movie as well. And it got to the point in one moment that someone was interested in buying the script and not having us as directors. And we were like, no, we're attached to the project for sure. But it was through the producers that we got the producers that I've worked with that we got their attention to start working actually on the project and knowing that it might it was gonna get done. And shooting in Barcelona, of course, you have to make something believable that it really looks like the States. We shot in we were lucky because a lot of airports in the United States are I don't know, I think they made in the 70s or something. So we find some old buildings here and a great art director that was able to capture all that. And since we've been so many times in those little rooms being questions, I think we knew how they look. They all look really the same. Atlanta, New York, Miami, we've been in all those. And so it was I think that was a big thing for us, like having the feeling that it was shot in the States. Today we had a screening and there were some people who were like asking us where in the state we shot it at. And we're like, well, in Barcelona, that part of the States that is Barcelona.
Yeah, what about you, Tomas?
And we got rejected absolutely everywhere. So I had like a really terrible experience in like the 4 and 5 years trying to make the movie, because I tried like all the typical avenues, like trying to apply to Sundance Labs, apply to all these different labs and residencies and film fund supports. And at some point, I just stopped and I just realized like I have to make it with whatever I have, because I have to stop waiting around for someone to greenlight this for me. And so that was when I was like, what do I have access to? What do I not need to wait uh, approval for? And then with my producers, we just went ahead and did it with all of that. So we really just went for it.
But, I mean, that leads me to a question I wanted to get to anyway, so we might as well. When you guys write, and please talk to each other. I think that obviously, I think the audience wants to hear it that way. Just chime in whenever. I mean, are you writing thinking about? I loved your movie. I loved the inventiveness and the sort of sparing way you used VFX, your effects. And I guess I'm kind of wondering, when you write, are you thinking about scale? Are you thinking about budget? Or do you sort of write from the heart and you're just like, this is the movie I want to see? Or are you mindful of how, difficult these are, all your first films? Like, I'm not going to get a lot of money. Like, I'm not going to have all these resources. Maybe I need to make this clear on the page. Or, I'd be curious to hear from you, just because of the VFX in the movie, that it really embodies less is more working. But maybe there's like the $20 million version of this movie. So to all of you, I feel like this applies to everyone, but it doesn't matter if you have VFX, but can you speak to that at all, and how you write and how you're mindful of production?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm assuming that was for me because of the VFX stuff.
But start with you, please. But you guys all please talk to each other. Make my life easier.
Yeah, well, at least for me, I think for the first like 5 or 6 drafts, I just have my writer's hat on, and I know from the setting that from the locations, from the setting itself of the story, that it's not going to be massive. So, but then I really try not to focus on scale, because I feel like that is something that you can later on in the process, once you have your director hat on, or you hand it off to your director, that they will be able to understand what they're dealing with and pare it down. So I definitely wasn't thinking about that for a long time, but then once we're getting closer to pre-production, then I absolutely have to think about that. But also, like indie filmmaking, you figure out a way. You hack it. If you don't have the money to do it, you fake it, and there's a lot of fun things that I wish I could kind of talk about with VFX, because a lot of the stuff that you might think isn't VFX is, and the stuff that you think is VFX isn't, and so you just find a way. You find a way.
Yeah. I mean, didn't you guys experience this? I mean, were rewrites done based on budget? I mean, look, this is strange because I wait a minute. I feel, Sammy and Alex, you're the only ones who did not direct your movie.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. We'll get you out of the way here. what? No. I mean, I think this does apply, and I assume you guys have written other things, even, you know, if this is your first produced screenplay. But I mean, are you sort of mindful of how you write in terms of production, or not?
I never am. Just because it's not, I mean, for our shorts, we were certainly,
Yeah.
you know, writing within specifications, and everything I've ever written before this on my own was a spec. And, you know, initially the goal was really to get an agent or manager. That was kind of my goal with the script. And but then at the same time, I mean, they had to get some designer dogs. You know, there was not really too much budget. Just naturally, there were some practical, you know, I remember there was a lot of conversation of, do we need them to be on the roof? Because that costs money, those bungees, you know, and having to be like, yeah. But things like that, you know, the scale was not was naturally
all on-
sort of not big.
Right, sure. Were you all on set? I mean, did you kind of have a life through production there and a voice?
I was there for some of the time, which was very fun, but I there was, you know, kind of through that and up until there, I would get, I mean, Todd is just a very generous, collaborative person. So it was very, you know, getting texts, what are the dogs' names? You know, or like, you know, there's a scene where a character is singing a song in a cover band over a scene, and at some point I got sent that track to make the dialogue match exactly the length of that song. You know, so there's these sort of fun homework assignments, you know, through shooting, really, but yeah, mostly remote.
Very cool. Well, yeah, and then yeah, the rest of you. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is a weird question, but given that you're all directing, I mean, do you feel like writers? I certainly don't feel like a writer. You know, I feel like my intention was to make a movie. Maybe that's I guess first I'd probably think of myself as an actor. Molly, you're an actor. Juan, I know you're a cinematographer. I mean, what was there? I mean, when you think about it, with the sort of impulse and the intention behind what's driving you to tell this story, given that you knew you wanted to direct, all of you, I mean, what is that like? I mean, can you talk about that a little bit? Is that an odd question? I mean, in terms of your relationship with writing, is that really what you're after, or is it a little more nuanced than that? Anyone can.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like being with all of you, I feel like such a fraud. I wouldn't say that I'm in any way connected to any of you because you're all unbelievable. But I feel like as an actor, I've always been, again, so interested in all of the other parts of it. So I've never quite identified just with being an actor. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that you have some writing that completely just blows you away, and then I feel like I write for fun to try to write. I don't know, it's just I would never say that first, but but I've enjoyed getting better at it. And you know, Nick and I have been writing together for a really long time, and I think what you were saying about not, you know, as directing this, realizing like, oh, we thought we were making a really cheap movie. Oh my God, it's 100 kids. Like, when they have school and all this fucking stuff that we just had no idea about.
Right.
I feel like I've now coming to writing, I'm almost scared to put anything in that is going to cost money. I'm like, it's like a room completely bare, like no one's there. So Nick, you feel as well?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, yeah, I think we thought our movie was really small because we're like, oh, it's one location, you know, it's like a very bound group of people. And then it was like, you know, very quickly we were doing a ton of rewriting. And, you know, obviously we had the benefit that we were already expecting to do a lot of improv. And so it was, you know, we knew we had to be flexible. But I do think that a lot of our favorite jokes, or, you know, a number of things that we really love or came to love in the movie, I think came from that feeling of like, okay, that first joke is just not, you can't do that. You can't have like we originally had, there's like a woman who falls into a coma, the founder of the camp early in the film. And we were going to have her come back in the end in an actual hospital bed, like rolled into the final show. And they were immediately like, you can't do that. Like there's no, on many levels, you can't do that. And so we sort of found another way to have her be present. And I think that was an example of something that I think worked out well. I like how it turned out. Yeah.
But this is just a very specific way of writing where we never stopped writing, and we didn't have a locked script, which obviously you have if, Sammy was sent stuff and there's inspiration on the day, but it was ever evolving in a way. So it was, I just think it's going to be interesting to make another, if we're able to make another thing, because it will just be very different, because hopefully we won't be rewriting every moment, even though that was such a wonderful way to make a movie.
Yeah.
I will say though, I mean, for me, I've always written sort of as a means to direct. And I'm only just now actually with the next thing that I'm writing, I'm really enjoying it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I do like writing actually, which is nice. It's not also that feeling, I get that for like 5 seconds and then I hate it. But but writing for me is like really connected with directing. I was constantly rewriting while we were shooting. When we were doing rehearsals, like for me, that was sort of like almost the final rewrite, because I would be rehearsing with the actors and, I would see them do something and I'd be like, oh, that's better, let's do that. Or we would go through a 3-page scene and I'd be like, I don't need anybody to say any of this, like just look at her, and I would cut everything. Or it's just like to me, that's the most exciting part of, directing something that you've written, is that you are always changing it and you are always rewriting it to a certain point. Of course, like you do have to pick your locations, but it's really fun to be so fluid. And I hope I have the freedom moving forward to continue to do that, to not be so rigid. And I think when you get to be surprised in rehearsals or on the day or whatever, like that, and then you go and edit, and that's writing too. So you're just always rewriting.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, speaking about rehearsals and not so much in production, I'm kind of curious. I'd love to hear from Alejandro and Juan here, because I saw so many similarities in my movie and yours, and dialogue heavy in a single location in a room. Not even maybe with your final cast. In writing the screenplay, did you work with actors? Did you hear it out loud? And I guess I'd love to hear from all of you. Do you like to hear this thing out loud? Like how many drafts have you done before you hear it? I mean, I found that to be hugely important, but to, my film, and I imagine yours, because of how dialogue heavy it is and intensive in a single location. But I'm curious, was that part of the writing process for you all, hearing it out loud?
Yeah, and by the way, congratulations on Mass. It was like really, the performances are
Thanks, man.
riveting.
You're casting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for us, it was mainly we started to write, and we really wanted to know that we wanted to make a chamber piece, which was really interesting for the producers, definitely. But the thing is that when we started writing, we started bouncing off things. We did it all together. It was not a thing where we would send each other stuff to make each one on our own. We just did it really all together. And that, what you said about like, speaking out loud the screenplay, we would do it between ourselves first, just to make sure is this real enough? We were writing in 3 languages. So that was a very, very crucial part for us. And that reading it with the cast really came much, much later on. It didn't come as we were writing the script. It was very near the shooting dates.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember we have a funny story, because we started writing about 7 years ago, on and off. But then the pandemic came, and so we started working out virtually, and it was on Google Drive. So it was funny just to kind of have both screens. We would turn off our cameras and just started writing and see what one would write and what the other one would edit, and we would do everything kind of live, and it was a very, very collaborative process.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we have to talk about it because we have all these teams here collaborating. And Tomas, not to leave you out, because I'm sort of terrified. I don't know. I don't think I can do it. So I'm very eager to hear. And Laurel, yeah, you're our other single director. So yeah, how is the working process with you all? I mean, you said Google Drive, like Molly, Nick. I mean, were you working that way? Were the four of you working that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time on Zoom, the four of us, because we were in different places. But when we were together, oftentimes we'd have a laptop connected via HDMI cable to a TV, and the other three would be like sitting on a couch, like watching, and somebody would be typing, and it'd be like, you know, you'd be throwing things out and like adjusting, and we'd literally just work through the whole script, like punching things up or adding things or like reading through. That was the main process by which we rewrote. Yeah, the HDMI cable is a huge tool in our tool belt. Yeah, no, I don't know, Mal, if you want to add.
No, yeah, but similarly, I have to read it out loud after, and I have to hear it. So I connect with that. But yeah, we didn't get to have any rehearsal, so it was truly like we had like a day and a half with Io, like 2 days with this. Like it was just, we had to kind of, so that's why we were lucky enough to cast people that we knew, so they could, you know, we could have that immediate comfortability. But yeah, and then us three, yeah, we would kind of improvise the scenes on a walk and then go and write them with the cable that Nick speaks of.
I'm curious, just to stay on you guys for a second. Like, what is this? I mean, like, what does the page look like when we're talking about improv? Because yeah, I'm sort of imagining like, and then they're going to be really funny. Trust me. You know what I mean? Like, what does this sort of look like? Do you know, when you know how you guys want to do it, how are you selling this thing to the reader? You know?
Right.
Well, I think with this type of script, it actually has to be, I think in some ways, even more structured, because you have to have those guardrails to then be able to play. So we had what happens in every scene, and pretty much what everyone says. It was just some of the things that they said are going to be different. And we had written like 47 different versions of what somebody could say, but then also if we improvised a better version, then we would go with that. But it was more coming from a lot of us who've worked in comedy. You always get kind of a free take at the end to make it up. And we always dreamed of what if a whole movie we got to kind of live in that take. But that obviously had to come with a very intense, you know, outline thing, and no one would give us any money to just go to the woods and, you know, make shit up in that way.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the jokes and a lot of what, like, the funny had to be on the page. Like a lot of it had to be figured out beforehand. And then it was actually surprisingly more of the story-driven moments where it was like, okay, we could just say they discover this, or this is sort of like, we know that this reveal will happen, or we know that they're going to be in tension about this. And that was enough meat, enough grist for like these brilliant actors that I got to work, that we both got to work with, but that I got to work with because I'm not one of them, and like let them kind of run with that idea fully.
Yeah, I mean, Tomas, Laurel, I don't want to leave you guys out. I mean, for me, it's a very lonely, sad process. So maybe.
Oh, totally. I want to write with someone. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. Like I just like wake
Truly.
up alone. I'm just like trying
it's to so lonely.
It sucks. It sucks. I'm so jealous. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Yeah, but it must make the process, yeah, it must make it just fun and freeing, and I don't know. I have all these fantasies of what it's like to work with someone. So
yeah. Sammy and Alex, you guys are married. I mean, I'm thinking of like the Anatomy of a Fall couple. I mean,
hopefully not that dramatic. I mean, we have a history of collaborating. That's how we started our relationship, like wanting to work together and do shorts. And So we've done that a lot in the past. For this, we collaborated just on the story of it together and sort of worked together on just the outline of it all. We wrote it in our old apartment and like just had the index cards and the permanent marker and like cleared off one of our entire walls and just kind of like mapped out where everything was happening and where it was going, like knowing that it was going to culminate in graduation. But then from there, Sammy took it and she wrote it in our closet in our old apartment. I set up a little airplane desk, like where it kind of goes like that, so she could squeeze in there. And the collaboration from there was me just like handing her Oreos while she wrote.
It's an important part of the process,
Yeah.
really.
Well, that's a good question. Like, what are the weird tricks? I mean, what helps you work? Like, what helps you write? I once heard a great story about a woman who would leave her house through the front door, get in her car, drive 15 minutes to like her back door and enter, like do this fake commute to start working. So like, I don't know. And then you eat Oreos. So like, you know, what are there any, things you can share? Like, do you go to Starbucks? Like, what were the environments that were sort of conducive to getting this done? You know.
I mean, I need a deadline. I mean, self-imposed more often, but that's the only way I've found that kind of momentum. Sometimes, you know, it's horrible. I can be, you know, in the middle of the night, like that sort of, it's bad news, unhealthy kind of writing, but that's what I have found. It's really helpful when the deadline comes from another person. Thankfully, I've gotten more of those, but that's what's always worked for me.
Yeah, I need someone there too, man. Besides Alejandro's huge talent for writing, I think that I made me think of that I don't go ever to the gym on my own. I need someone to take me there. Then in the Zumba lesson, I'm there, I dance the most of it. But I think that it is a really important question because you have to know what are your like uh, strengths, what are your things that you need a little bit of push in there. And I think that definitely, as I said, beside Alejandro's talent, like he's like really organized. He knows he's the one who saves the document with the right name and sets meeting. So his method, I think for me, is something that I really appreciated. But I knew that I needed that because otherwise I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna be inspired at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's when I want to write, and that just doesn't work that way if you're working with a team.
Well,
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, oh, sorry.
No. Well, I wanted to get to you and Tomas anyway. Someone's asking already. They want to hear from you about writing alone.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was, what I've learned is so much with writing is about knowing your process and knowing what works for you specifically, because it's different for everyone. And figuring out, yeah, just like what's going to give you the ideas, what's going to be create the best scenario for you to feel free and creative, to get shit done. And once I figured out a process that worked for me, it made things a lot easier. Because I before was trying to write in certain ways that like other people suggested, and that's good. Like you do sort of need to hear from other people how they do things, for you to figure out what works for you. Like for me specifically, like it helps me to it's very sort of structured, but it helps me to think about scenes in like, or to think about stories in like 10-minute chunks. I don't know why, but it just helps me to organize the story in my head better and think about it that way. And also, I know that music really helps me, and I know that I'm productive in the morning and I'm productive after 5 p.m. and in between like noon and 4, I'm useless. So I do other things that I know that I need to do. And I'm writing something right now that I'm trying to bang out really fast, and it's been really, really helpful this time around. Whereas when I was writing Starling, I just felt like I was flailing and figuring out what would work for me. not to say that like I'm doing amazingly right now, you know, like you have your good days and your bad days, but just, yeah, figuring out your process is such a big part of it.
Yeah, I was actually, I have a feel like a similar vibe to that, where it's like for a long time I struggled to find what was the right thing for me to do when sitting down to write, and I realized that like routine was the best thing for me. And so then I realized like if I'm going to call myself a writer, I should write every day because that's my work. And so I just eventually set
Totally. It's
myself
a
up
huge
like,
part of it.
yeah, so it's like I set myself up. It's like, all right, you sit down and like I write 4 hours every day because after that I'm also useless. There's no more ideas after 4 hours. So I would like start at 7 because I like starting early, and that makes me feel really like refreshed, and that's like a time of the day when nobody's really bothering me yet, like in emails and phone and like messages and whatnot. So it's like, and then that eases off the anxiety because at least that day, and like I'll turn off my phone. The phone is like a killer, like
Oh, the
social
phone,
media.
big thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got
It
to
like
like put your
pops
phone
up.
away and block Instagram and
Yes. Yeah, what I'll do is like I'll write for 50 minutes and then check my phone for 5, and then write for 50 minutes and then check my phone for 5.
you give
Um,
yourself little rewards.
yeah, exactly. It's like push through, and then I'll have a coffee at like in this like 5-minute break.
Yes, the coffee. I always do a cappuccino at like 2 p.m. and that's my reward.
Exactly. Yeah, the reward system is so key,
Truly.
and blocking out that time, because then at least every day you made a little bit of progress. You might not be like, I don't feel like you write, at least for me, you don't write when you're inspired. Inspiration finds you when you're already sitting down, like with
Yes,
the pen
you
in hand.
you have to like will it. And it's funny, like when you're in it, you're like when you're, you know, day to day, you're seeing these tiny minuscule you know, movements and you're like, oh, I'm never going to get this done. But then it's amazing. Like a month passes and you're like, oh, wow, I actually did all that. I don't even remember doing that.
Exactly. Even like a page a day, eventually, like in 3 months, that's 90 pages, so.
Yeah. Oh, and then to answer that question about ways that I bounce my ideas around, I just force all of the people I trust in my life to talk to me about my ideas. My fiance, my parents, people I went to film school with. For me, it's I figure out my ideas by talking to people, and so just my mom, good way to just bounce ideas off of people.
I mean, yeah, we'll get to some audience questions, but I'm sort of dying to ask you all. I mean, I think this is a huge part of the process. Notes, feedback. When are you? Because you can give it to your mom, and then at some point you got to start giving it to other people. That can be a little more complicated. I mean, when do you? There's probably levels of this, and sort of kinds of sharing. There's sort of like friendly people, and then there. But please talk about that. I mean, when how many drafts? Like when do you feel you're ready for notes? How do you handle notes? I think a lot of people, you want to sort of feel there are no bad notes. They can solidify my vision, even the things that are wrong and I can't stand. But please, yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys because it's obviously sort of a part of the process and a big one.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we had the script from start to finish, and we of course we were really eager to share it with people we love, but there was someone very integral to our part, me also coming from the editing background, and it's our own film editor, Emanuele Tiziani. He came really on board during the writing process with us because he's such a sensitive and smart, and he listens very well to everything, and he loves to read. And so for us it was actually, I would think it was him, having our editor really back then kind of helped us all, shape things in a way that and ask ourselves questions about, is this really going where you want to go? How do you want to go about it? So I would actually say him, which is not, I don't know if it's usual because we don't have like a formula as our first screenplay and first film, but that really was something special.
Yeah, I feel like there is something to that kind of going through enough of a process when you're still in your small group and you're in some, like having those people that you really trust, where it's like, then when the notes come in and they're not right, or they're not, you know, there's something that's taking you off the course, you've all already been so critical of the work and each other and like talked about it to death, that you're kind of like, yeah, we already know that that doesn't work. Like that doesn't bother us at all. We already hated that. And or it's like, no, we actually have already like pressure tested that amongst ourselves, and that idea does work. And so, I mean, I think, you know, in our case, it was like a lot of, you know, it is so hard to be motivated, but I think that when you are in a group and you want to serve the other people that you're with, and you want to make sure everybody feels good about what you're making, it adds that added level of like, okay, like that's not good enough, you know, this person's not happy yet, this person feels something's not right yet, and you end up being so iterative. Like by the end, it's really been like, it's really gone through the ringer. I would say our document definitely went through the ringer, you know, a lot before anybody external was reading it.
Yeah, I could just like hop right off of that, because what I feel like I made like a very rookie mistake was that I showed my script too early, maybe, to a lot of people. And I feel like there's like what you were just saying is just like there's levels. There's the people that you can trust to actually critique you, you know, in a constructive way, and those are the people that you show draft after draft. But then you don't go out and like pitch it and or try to get financing or try to get it packaged until you're sure that it's like, oh, like the best version. Because there's been so many times when you feel like this thrill that like, oh my god, I just finished this draft, and you're just like riding this high and you're like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life, like I'm gonna send it out to everybody I know and they're all gonna love it. And then, you know, like what you realize is like, no, it still needs a lot of work, and you got to go back to the drawing board, and then you get really, really disappointed, and picking yourself back up is hard. So I feel like I did that enough times where I realized like I got to stop doing that. I got to work on it super hard and to give it the time it needs to mature until it's ready to show.
And also, it's really important to know that I believe that the first time someone reads something is never going to be repeated again. It's a unique moment in which someone's going to tell you what they believe when they saw for the first time. The second time, they might add some notes, but the feeling is going to be completely different. So yes, you have to choose which matches your burning. I don't know if that translates right on the process to choose that, because you're never going to get a first impression again. And that's really important.
Yeah. Well, anyone else? I mean, I find it's this sort of terrible, you know, catch-22 of sort of needing feedback to kind of find out where you are, and then putting yourself in a position of sort of, you know, ruining a first impression or whatnot. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably a process that you continue to learn and grow with. I mean,
Sorry guys, my internet totally turned off and now I'm on my phone. Are we still talking about notes?
we're still talking about notes.
Okay, oh good. I was just gonna say that it's a super fine line because you don't want to share it with too many people, but you do need the feedback. And I find that I know when to generally when the notes really hurt, when it's something that makes me go like, ugh, I know that it's usually right.
You know, so speaking of that, there's a question here. You know, how many drafts did you all go through before you felt your scripts were ready to shoot? I'm sure it's hard to know exactly how many drafts you had. Maybe you do, but I think like a kind of big question that I think it is important and kind of difficult to answer is, how do you know you're finished? I mean, you know, there's sort of the phrase like, you don't finish a film, you abandon it, or something like that, right? Like I mean, it feels somewhat true, I think, a little bit for a screenplay too. I mean, Sammy and Alex, you might feel differently having handed it off, but I'm kind of, and the rest of you knowing you're directing this, I mean, was there a point that you felt, the way they phrase it is sort of when you felt you were ready to shoot? But yeah, can you speak to that a little bit? The knowledge, the sort of assurance that you're finished with a script? No.
I mean, I don't, it is different, of course, because there's, I think it's a different relationship that directors have here, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know how you really know, but I think, well, with this, it was very lucky to every step of every person that came on that gave notes. They were always wonderful. And so it just was a very organic process. First, Jessica and Will, they gave really insightful and interesting notes. And then Todd Haynes getting those notes are really a gift, like their poetry. And they're really, it's so interesting because the job I was going between was for a studio, and I was getting insanely micromanaged, not trusted notes. And like, that was a movie that, literally, Bugs Bunny is in. I mean, there's like, so that was really interesting to go back and forth of what notes can even be, from someone who's thoughtful and open and curious. They can be sentences that are just like, oh, I've noticed this, and then you kind of go, oh yeah, and then things come from there. So I'm not sure I've answered the question, but that process was really dynamic, and a lot of it was ultimately subtraction, the process that we had, and so kind of felt like it was in a right place, and then we were in a holding period until the schedules of these people aligned.
Yeah.
So it's collaborative and when to know, I guess.
Well, I mean, I guess another perspective on it, I guess, would be if it's not so much about knowing when you're finished. I mean, what does the film look like compared to your script? For the directors, I guess, or maybe no, for all of you, you know what I mean? I mean, how did that turn out? And I don't necessarily mean good or bad, just sort of how does it compare, and sort of how did it evolve, and what was that like? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, the way we wrote the movie was deliberately kind of overwritten in a way, with the idea that we were going to be editing it like a documentary, where you would have sort of an abundance of like sort of an archive of material, and know what the arc is going to be, but then really be able to shape that in the edit. And so, yeah, I mean, our script, as it were, was not done really until after it even premiered at Sundance, and we recorded the audio secretly of all the laughs like there, so that way we could go back and keep working and trying to like hone all the comedy moments. And so like we were basically, crafting what ended up being like the script all the way through. And every film works this way. Ours just happened to be like particularly dynamic in that way. Like you could do a lot within the confines we had given ourselves.
Yeah, but I would say like more than I thought it would be more different because of the medium that we were working in, but we still can't believe that they let us make like a movie in this way and with this kind of 16mm look. Like it was just our ideas just didn't make a lot of sense to most people, rightfully so. And so the fact that we were able to actually make that is really a beautiful thing. I don't know if we'll ever get to in that way. But yeah, and I feel like the script is like the start of a conversation. I don't feel like I'll ever write anything that I feel like is done, because I feel like that, going back to the collaboration and the film independent mentality, I just feel like so many people come in and can shift, what you were initially thinking, and that's the joy of working in this. But yeah, I think our initial script is actually closer to it than I thought.
Yeah, for us, it was pretty much that it. I mean, the same thing. I mean, when we wrote the script, we were tightly thinking about it, how to construct it visually, and it turned out pretty much what luckily what we thought we wanted to do. There was one thing that we did is that we shot it chronologically. I don't know if you had a chance to do that, Fran, with Mass, but we actually asked for those, you know, the whole bulk of the interrogation scenes to do it chronologically, which doesn't often happen. But everybody supported us, and the actors were really into that, and the crew was really into that, and we shot with 2 cameras because, you know, we wanted to have you know, as important was one is saying the reaction of the other one is as important, and that makes the whole film. So we did quite a few turnarounds of a room. um, but having said that, I think that was very interesting because along the way we were kind of feeling the script is working, the word is working, the actors are feeling it. They were adding things here and there, and for us, I mean, it's pretty much what was on the page, but of course, you never stop writing right until you finish editing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that also just don't be afraid that, I mean, the script is going to be edited all the way by the actors, by editors, of course, by the director. And I think that I learned something. It was like, we're not sure about this, but instead of like taking it out, just leave it there. It's like, can you go through from the line that is said before to the next one by just cutting it? Yeah. So, and it was good because sometimes we were giving a lot of information to the actors of what was happening, but then we realized that saying that out loud was too much, too obvious. It's just like, okay, that's what you have to feel. That's where you are at now. But the fact that it was not cut out from the script, I think was a big, big thing for us to understand that you don't have to, it's impossible to have like a script that is perfect or finished, or, you know, you still have to be a little bit of shame of sharing it when you do, because otherwise it's for sure too late.
I think the biggest change for mine was I cut so much. I ended up cutting so much stuff. And I go back and forth on how if it was a good thing to shoot those scenes or not. I mean, honestly would have been great to have more time in the schedule. So maybe shouldn't have shot those. But at the same time, yeah, like you were saying, I think it was good for the actors to have that information. Um, you know, I think a big thing that I learned with this film is that so much I overwrote, I think at times because of the notes I was getting, because people would be like, I don't understand this. This is confusing. And so I'd be like, okay, well, I'll write like 3 scenes to try to make this more clear. And then I would get into the editing room and I'd be like, I didn't need those 3 scenes. I needed like one moment in one scene. And so I don't know, maybe it was good ultimately for me to shoot those scenes anyway. And it doesn't always turn out so great that you can cut all of this stuff and it still makes sense. But it just made me, it's been helpful in the things that I'm writing now, and just I'm not writing as much. I also ended up cutting out like a huge climax at the end of my film that was the climax initially, and I just didn't need it. And this film was more powerful without it. So yeah, stripping back.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like we went through a similar process where the stuff that I ended up getting cut out was all these like dialogue scenes that I had put in there to like, kind of bring to light what some of the characters' motivations were throughout the film, and then then you're stuck with these like 9-minute like dialogue scenes that when you're on set and you feel the crew kind of like get heavy around these scenes, you're like, this is going to be even worse for an audience. And so you can kind of take a cue next time, like I won't even write scenes like that. Like I'll take a cue from what my experience was on set, and then even in the edit room, where you're like, how do I tell this visually? How do I tell this with a decision, rather than like a character going on and on about something that they've lived through or they want. So I think that that's something that I like learned in the whole process of writing and rewriting, and finally rewriting in the editing room as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go
sorry. I was just going to say we had such a differential because a lot of times our crew was seeing, you know, something that had never happened before with like the amount of improv we were doing. And so there was such a feeling of like lean in and like what's, you know, we would cut, and people were so shocked by what had just happened that, you know, it was like there was just a very present, almost like having a test audience there in the moment. And then when we were doing some of the things that we did end up cutting that were more scripted, you know, yeah, you could definitely feel, I mean, we shot a scene twice that is not in the finished film. So that, you know, that just tells you right there.
Same.
Yeah. So yeah, that definitely transpires. It did for us. Yeah, so agreed.
I love this. I feel bad. I feel like I'm ignoring some audience questions. But I have to ask this. It's just too funny. You don't have to answer, Sammy and Alex. But what scene would you have changed from the Netflix version? I feel like it's
That's in the the audience question. It's you. We have
I
changed.
mean, are there like different scenes? I mean, are there? I mean, what does it? Is that? Yeah.
No. I mean well, also the Netflix Netflix bought the movie at Cannes. I should probably clarify. No, for us, I mean, the truth is, the final script draft and the movie, I mean, you can kind of read a lot there. It's pretty, I mean, there weren't big things cut out or rearranged or anything like that. I think what was so fun was getting to see Todd's process up close of the music, the way he decided to shoot some of these scenes, some of these long scenes are you know, through the mirror in the, you know, dressing room. Like, these are really long one shot takes, and he wasn't going, no, let's do another million ways. You know, like that process was really exciting to come to life. But
Julianne's lisp was not in the
oh
script.
yeah, that was
so
not in the
was a nice
script.
surprise.
That was an
That was
a brilliant stroke from Julianne. But yeah, I mean, no, what would we wouldn't change
I wouldn't change a
this
thing.
thing. The scene.
Well, it's an Oscar-nominated script. You wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Right.
Of course. How did we forget that? Thank you, whoever said Molly. I'm seeing a bunch of questions about outlining, and I know we've talked about process, but maybe just quickly. I mean, is this is outlining something you guys do? It's not. I did not do it, and you know, I had a big scene in my movie, like you guys and Alejandro and Juan. But like, what do you? Is outline? Do you guys do that? Do you find it helpful? I'm seeing nods.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to write from an outline, and for this one, it was great because we did it together. But it's, you know, it goes from cards on the wall to, I usually put it in an Excel spreadsheet labeled like 1 to 100, and it's brief. You know, it's, you know, Elizabeth goes dress shopping with Gracie and her daughter. You know, I mean, it can be as simple as that. And then the rest comes in the process of writing. But I think that's always helpful to know where you're going, or if you're off a bit or something like that. But I've always done that since school.
I'm the same. I outline. I sort of, I do kind of like a loose, or it's not a loose, it's a beefed up outline where I think I do the bulk of like my actual writing during the outlining process, where I'm discovering scenes as I'm outlining, and I'll sort of like do a shorthand quick version of the scene just so I know how, like, the direction it will go in. And then when I'm physically writing the draft, I'll refer back to that. And sometimes I stick to what I wrote in the outline, and sometimes once it goes over to, you know, writing the actual script, organically doesn't feel right anymore and it changes. But I find it's always helpful to have that guideline. Otherwise, I feel lost and I don't know what direction to go in. It's always nice to have something to refer back to. And not necessarily, I don't force myself to stick to it, but that it's just, yeah, it's good to have a guide.
Yeah, for us, it was pretty much what you just said. I mean, there was no outline, no synopsis, no treatment. We just went right with it. But that was our case. We felt that we just wanted to get into it, and in a sense, that kind of helped us because whoever read it was really engaged because it's so sustained in dialogue, and the actors actually, once they read it, they said, okay, this is interesting. So for us, it was really all about having that dialogue there present from the first moment.
I have like this like a cyclical process. Like the first draft usually comes from like a very short treatment, like a 1 page little treatment, and then I'll do a vomit draft, which is always awful, like absolutely terrible. And then from that, at least I can kind of get a sense of like what the movie could be, maybe if I work on it. And then I'll just do like I'll go back and I'll do mini treatment, outline, new draft, notes, back over again, mini treatment, outline, notes, and rinse and repeat until I have something that makes sense. So I'm like, I waste way too much time. Yeah. I wish I could just like, I wish it was a magic trick and I could just do it right away, but it takes me forever.
Yeah. I was just going to say that we had a process that was very much about an outline and a structure, but we also relied heavily on Excel, a wonderful program where we were sort of had 4 different types of scenes.
You have a deal with a program? You keep plugging programs. It's amazing.
Cables and programs. I'm sponsored by Best Buy.
Okay, great.
But no, I was just going to say we had like scenes that we decided we were going to fully script this scene, scenes that we just needed alts for all the jokes, scenes that we just needed like a bare bones outline. Like, so we had kind of 4 different types of scenes. And so as we were writing, we would, some scenes we would take up to that level and that level of especially stuff with the kids. We knew we wanted to start from a place that was like highly scripted. But yeah, some of the scenes, I mean, like, the scene with Molly and Ben where they have a climactic fight was something that we had rehearsed and sort of talked about what the ideas were, but was something that we really knew we wanted to come alive just between the 2 of them on the day.
Yeah, that's great. We're slowly running out of time, and I think it's almost 4 a.m. in Barcelona, so I feel terrible. That kind of leads me to this question up at the top here. Sort of, I just directed my first short, never went to film school, so I literally Googled how to direct. I should do that. I'm a writer, not a director, but now that the producers are very excited about the feature version, I get their short story. I mean, she had the short film and now there's a feature. I'm stuck on finding the bigger story. What do you do when you can't quite figure out the way into the story? I mean, I'm kind of hearing answers to that and sort of your process and outlining. It feels like, I think maybe Laurel, you even said you're sort of discovering this thing by working in that kind of format and sort of writing out scene by scene. I mean, that's a kind of hard question. Some of you, it sounds like you guys really had this. Did anyone have a short film version of their feature? But at theater camp, right? Yeah. I mean, can you speak to that at all?
I feel like you just have to bang your head against a wall in a healthy way and not allow yourself to find it and not feel hard on yourself if it takes a long time, because it's tough. I would also say watching things, I feel like, doesn't get talked about enough. I feel like, we should all be taking in as much different art about the thing that we're writing. That's what really inspires me. Then you have to make sure you're not stealing the great ideas, but I do think that that really helps me.
Yeah, reading and watching is sort of a big question there, right? I mean, especially downtime and in between projects. I mean, I don't know if you're all currently, Laurel, you said you were, but actively writing something else. But yeah, I imagine I would think that's an important thing. I don't know if that's something you sort of do as an actual practice, or you obviously just kind of like to read stuff, but I would think that'd be very, very helpful.
That's a big part of my process. I oftentimes find reading is even more inspiring than watching films. And yeah, I don't know. I try to, when I'm trying to figure out a story, I try to be as open my mind to just, I don't know, just be open, even to friends' conversations or books, photo books, movies. And for me, it's the same thing. It's just banging my head against the wall and kind of being mad at myself for a while, like that I haven't cracked it, but it comes eventually. You just have to, it just takes time sometimes, and trial and error. And I think just pay attention to any of the things that excite you. Any idea that's like exciting, hold on to that, write it down somewhere, and like you can always sort of return back to that, even if it's a scene idea or a character or whatever, like when you're like stuck and you're like, I don't know why I even want to do this. I think it's just, yeah, pay attention to the things that resonate with you personally.
And also maybe getting rid of the short film. I mean, I don't know how much of that short film you're trying to take into a feature, but sometimes I've seen this in friends that have a successful short film and then they try to make that same idea a length, a feature film. And that might be a mistake because maybe you're trapped in that idea that kind of work for a short film and it doesn't always translate way into a longer version. So set yourself free. What is the thing that you like about that short film? And I'm sure the producers will listen to you and be like, hey, this worked as a short film. This is the same idea, but a different story. Because if it's not growing naturally, I think there's something, maybe that story needed to be short.
I love that answer. Well, look, we're sort of wrapping up here. I'm running out of time. I mean, I'm like afraid to ask this question. It feels bad, but I mean, if anyone has any thoughts about sort of, you know, what you've learned, you know what I mean? You've written one screenplay, you've had great success with it. You should write another. What can you apply to the next one? What are you applying? You know, what might be helpful to people listening? And forgive me for not getting to all your questions, but I feel like this is sort of an important one before we close.
I feel that try to be I guess try to stick to what you initially feel about that story, and really try to do that, even if you're you know, go about ways to explore and how it develops and you add layers and stuff, and maybe you can deviate, but try to go back to that initial feeling of why that triggers you, why you want to do it. Because in our case, it was a bit like that. I mean, we knew where we want to go, how we wanted to finish it, and we tried different things. But in the end, it had that structure, it had that feeling. So I'd say just go back to that, you know, go back to that root and try to keep it as intact as possible.
I'm not gonna do better than that. That was great. Anyone else?
I second that. This time around when I'm writing, I'm really trying to find ways to connect more with myself and not be so concerned about what other people will think. I think with my first script, I was, you know, thinking a lot about like getting things right, and I'm trying to free myself a little bit more this time. And I'm having more fun in the process, and making more discoveries and surprising myself. So try it. I don't know.
Yeah, just bouncing off of that, I feel like there's no perfect way or right way to write a script. There's no like perfectly finished script either. So I think it's just at the end of the day, you just make the movie that you would want to watch, like only you, because then it'll respond to your voice and the weirdness that is uniquely yours. And then, you know, if some people love it, great, and some people don't like it, that's also fine, you know, but at least you were happy with what you did. And also don't expect like an overnight miracle that your first draft is going to be perfect, because it's not. And just, you know, hang in there and keep going and get through the rejections, because eventually something will come out of it, hopefully.
And also characters. I think that for me, I really learned a lot that how important it is to build a character, a person that it's there, that is real, and you can throw stuff at it. And we knew from the beginning what the story was going to be about and where it was going to end. But I think that it really helped that we build these two main characters, that we knew who they were, how they were. You relate like, oh, this guy looks like this friend of ours. This person looks like this friend of ours. And having that couple of our film could be in many different films. This is one of the many different stories. And I think that sometimes we start about that, yeah, this is what happened, this is what happened, well, but to whom, right? And who are those persons that you can gonna throw? And of course, this is something that people have said in the past, but it really worked for me seeing the story that way. First, who is this happening to? And then you can throw 3 different movies and see which one works out.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that, you know, I think going off what Molly was saying about like watching things, or, you know, I think having those like totems that you know, sometimes it's like this one small thing, whether it's a song or it's a scene or it's something in another movie that you're like, okay, that's the thing that we're aiming for, and kind of gets you back centered in what that concept is. I think like one thing, you know, there's this clip online of like Serge Gainsbourg on some French talk show, and they have like a bunch of kids dressed up as him with like a scotch and a cigarette, like with a beard, and they're all singing to him, and he's weeping watching this presentation happen. And I think for us, we just kept like going back both to like the aesthetics of that moment, like the concept, the level of emotion, like the inappropriateness of it. Like, I think we, you know, and at the same time, that's not a movie, you know, like that's not a full movie. So it's like,
Oh, but I so see that in your movie. That's so great.
so I think like, yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I feel like that feeling of like, how do you make a movie that feels like that one thing? And that has certainly been part of our process.
I think, you know, I've noticed a lot of people in the chat talking about like writing, that they're in school and they're finishing their script for school. And I feel like the only thing that I really could say to that is, you know, I went to college for screenwriting, and that was a long time ago. It takes a lot of years of writing specs after spec after spec for no one to get one. I mean, at least, I mean, not every time, obviously, but for in this square, to get, you know, your first produced screenplay. And I think so much is about writing to what you really want to see, and not what you think someone else is going to want to see, and maintaining that endurance. I feel like endurance is like the most, endurance to failure, and just setting another deadline is like going to be the best thing that you can do, I think.
That's great. Well, thank you guys. I think this is a great time to wrap up, because I have to go on YouTube and watch this Serge Gainsbourg video. But thanks everyone. Thank you so much. They're such beautiful films. If you all haven't seen them yet, please go and yeah, I really appreciate this. I've learned a lot. I got a whole lot out of this, so I know everybody else did. And Alejandro, Juan, you guys can go to sleep now. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.